they had a big incident in Washington, D.C., where who's that guy held up some Muslims in Washington, D.C. when he held up over 100 people as hostages. And later on, I think there was a debate over how to cover this kind of news. There was some rethinking of how to properly use the communications you have. So I think, of course, from our viewpoint, we feel we already experimented it, and we feel that all the people working in the mass media have a certain responsibility, and already explained, what's our goal and how to accomplish this thing. And anything contrary to this would be criticized by the people, not only by your own leadership, but the people also have their own opinions. So this kind of policy, I think, the brainwashing, I feel that nobody really can avoid brainwashing in this world, because you're influenced by we're all together and we influence each other. So everybody's brain is being constantly washed. So the only difference really is what is washed out. What we hope to achieve in China is to wash out the dirty base instincts of human being and to try to replace it with loftier ideas. I think nobody can say people less selfish, people less greedy is worse than the people. This at least is our standard, that the people less selfish, less greedy is certainly better than the people more greedy and more selfish. So that what we want to do is to really replace these selfish and greedy ideas with a better one. So for this reason, we do accept the kind of censorship in China from the people, from the leadership, from our peers. So this is how we work. And this is why in China, the audience play a very important role in the theater arts, in all performing arts. The audience is very much aware of their rights and their responsibilities. They'll tell us through letters or meetings what they got out of the play. If there's any ill effects which would harm our common cause, they will point it out, criticize us, and sometimes come up with a new idea how to correct it. So this is the kind of relationship between audience and us. So cultural workers are not special. It is really a division of labor in the society. The workers and peasants, they feed us, and they have the right to supervise us. So whenever we want to put up a play, we do get a lot of help from the peasants workers when we want to depict them. Maybe I want to go into a little bit about our working method, 3-in-1 combination, which means the process of creating a new play, a contemporary play, is when we found a worthwhile story we want to project, then we would send a group of people from our theater, including director, set designer, and the writer, and a few actors, form a group and go to that area to talk to that area, the people. And usually when you go there, you get the help immediately from that locality, and they would have people to work with you and to show you how this thing took place, and also to tell you, set up models for you and point out models for you to write about. So then after you live there for a while, you have the draft of the play, and you try to set it up in that locality right there and get the opinions. Once you have a rough idea, you show them, and they'll give you, they will try to enrich it and tell you more, give you more suggestions. That is how a new play would be created on contemporary theme in China. And that's what we call a 3-in-1 combination that combines the professionals and combines the administrative leadership and masses, which means the people in that area. So this is the relationship between audience. This is the working method. This is the principle of art and literature and what kind of role they play in the society. So all in all, what I'm trying to convey to you is a different kind of concept in art and literature and how it functions in China. And this is exactly what Mao wanted. And this was the tradition set up by Mao since 1920s up to now. If China continues to carry out Mao's line in art and literature, time will tell whether we can achieve our ultimate goal in art and literature, which is again Mao's ultimate goal. Quote, he said, "What we want to achieve is the unity of politics and art, the unity of content and form, the unity of revolutionary political content, and the highest possible perfection of artistic form." You see, the new culture in China, the history is still very short. It's very young. It didn't have much time to develop. So this goal is still there, whether we will follow Mao's line and try to achieve this goal and set up a new kind of culture which is not quite the same as the highest perfection of art forms in the West or in other societies, but a unique, different kind of standard in China. So this we have to wait and see. Now Chairman Mao has died, and whether this would be followed up, and we don't know at this point. So I'll end my talk right here, and I'll wait your questions and criticisms. Thank you.
The questions, you might as well just direct right up here to the podium. I don't need to be
Why do you want you to stand up?
intercede here, but why don't you just start up there on the right?
Yes.
Do you have professional newspaper drama critics, and what influence do they have upon your performances?
Yes, we used to have professional critiques, and we don't like them. You see, first of all, many of them, they would write those long critique and go into so-called in-depth of the play, the structure of the play, and the character, and this and that. Very rarely they touch upon the social effect of the play. Rather, they go into analyzing how it's portrayed, this character, whether this is vivid enough, or this is the acting, how the acting is. Usually go into the techniques of the play, playwriting, acting, set designing, and everything else. And and because they themselves are not really in close touch with the audience, with the reality, with workers and peasants. So what they feel they're professional critiques. So what they are look after is this kind of thing. But since the Cultural Revolution, the new plays, there are those old professional critiques haven't written very much since the Cultural Revolution. And there were long articles written by groups of audience or writers, but now the emphasis is more on the social effect, of the play. So there are still some professional critiques, but they also have shifted their emphasis, not quite as before. Now maybe, you know, the critique Andrew just quoted, some of them have come back that, you know, again, show their professional knowledge in certain things. That's possible that, you know, they'll write again about music, plays, and things like that. Yes, please.
Yeah, you mentioned that 1/3 of your plays will be out of Western plays.
Yeah.
What is the basis of selectivity of those plays, considering that you only put out the plays that serve the people and serve the social society?
Yeah, you see,
Give me
yeah.
examples. And also, do you try to put any play reflecting the struggle of third world countries like Middle East, South Africa, you know, South America?
To answer your first question, why we put on these plays, since we only attract that kind of audience. You see, from 49 until today, we ourselves, the people who work in the cultural field, also went through a process of change, what do you say? Being re-educated, you know, because we ourselves, at times, like I said, we were confused. Who should we serve first? You know, there were arguments went on all along since 1949. You know, yes, we should emphasize on serving the people, workers, peasants, soldiers. But what about intellectuals? You're not going to serve them? You know, there was one argument very strong in the 50s. We can't forget them because after all, we have United Front. So we can't forget about them. And also, on the other hand, also we have a wrong judgment of what is a high standard, you see, because we have that kind of, because of our own background, because of our training, we felt to put on a play by Cao Yu is much more interesting than put on a play than by a new writer who just wrote a contemporary theme playing contemporary theme. So there was a period when, you know, actors or directors all competing to produce Western classics or Chinese classics in our own cultural field, you know, where they feel you have more to dig in. There are more meat in there, you know, not dried and only with bones in these contemporary plays, you know. And also, it's true that a lot of actors, they don't have enough knowledge or enough understanding of workers and peasants. It's not easy to portray worker or peasant on the stage when you don't have that kind of life, you don't have that kind of same kind of experience, same kind of background. So there are still, you know, quite a number of actors and directors shy away from that kind of play because they, just like I told you, one of the old writers, Cao Yu, he acknowledges that he can't write workers and peasants. He just doesn't understand them. You know. So this problem exists with cultural workers. You know, we try to make cultural worker go down to the countryside, go to the factories, to live with workers, peasants, and understand them, portray them, and try to, you know, really like them. So the reason that we put on this kind of plays, the one is, you know, you can't forget intellectuals, bourgeoisie. Two, among ourselves, there are people who really feel that's the kind of play would lift the standard. You know, there's a confusion of lift toward which direction. You know, what is the high standard? You know, is it we go back to the same standard of you know, set up by the Western world or set up by the feudal lords, and that's supposed to be the highest, or we have to create a socialist culture, set up our own standard. So this is the first question. The second question is, what did you say? Oh, the third world. Yes, we tried, but there aren't many. there was one play produced by the army troop reflecting the African liberation movement. That was in the early 60s, right? About Congo, was it?
Congo.
Congo, yeah. And there was some play about Latin America. I don't remember. I don't think there's any play about Middle East yet. Nothing about Middle East. I think this is one problem. You see, one thing is really the Chinese writers don't understand, don't have the background to write such, except from written material, printed material. Like they produced a play about Vietnam based on there was the diary, or it was a diary they published, the Vietnamese published, and that we produced into a play about Vietnam War. So that's quite difficult to write about a country, a people who the writer really don't understand. So aside from from news stories or from printed matter, there's nothing to go on. So I think they'll try, but it's difficult.
May I just add one thing to what Yuan Qi has said regarding why they put on those kind of plays? I think Yuan Qi hinted at it, but she didn't make it very specific. That is the influence of the Soviet art and culture on China in the early 50s. Because right after liberation, not long after liberation, many Soviet directors, actors, stage people of all kinds, ballet people all came to China, supposedly to make some contribution to China developing their culture in a socialist direction. But they brought a lot of these so-called standards with them. What is quality? What should be the orientation and direction? And I think there were also a lot of people inside the Chinese Communist Party who agreed with those standards themselves, who for decades, from the early 30s, had been fostering those same standards inside China. So these people, incidentally, were in leading positions in the Chinese films, theater, and the operas, and so forth. So this was another reason why there was this deviation from what Chairman Mao was trying to develop as the direction orientation for art and literature. This was very, very important, very heavy influence.
Yes, please. Dai Lian, I think now she's teaching. No, she's teaching. She's still in the 中央歌舞学院. Yeah, she's no, Peking. She's in Peking teaching. Yes, please.
What's the effect of Brecht's play? Did you ever put on any?
Brecht?
Yes, Brecht's
We put on one of his plays,
Only one.
Mother Courage. That was 1959. As a
Failed?
hmm?
That failed in terms of its message?
Well,
It did here.
it failed here. Well, we didn't get very enthusiastic reactions from the audience. Of course, lots of college students came to see this play, and I guess they liked it in a way because it was more a newer form, because we had Brecht always have those lyrics and music, have singing, yeah, and have third person narrating the scenes and the thinking and all that. So some college students liked it, but for the most part, the audience reaction was not enthusiastic, particularly when we had a seminar. You see, when we have a seminar of the audience, we always select at least some workers and some other kind of audience. And and the reaction was, first of all, the difficult part is they don't understand the historical background of that play, as far as workers are concerned. So they can't get themselves to sympathize with the the mother, the heroine on the stage. They don't think, on the contrary, they think this woman not only shouldn't be sympathized with, they don't agree with her moral standard.
Well,
You know.
Brett didn't want you to either, neither did Brett.
Neither did Brett. Yeah. Okay.
Brett didn't want
Yeah.
that either, but the Americans.
And then, of course, the heavy part about is, he condemned war, right? War, that's the tragic part. War, it should be condemned. But then the heavy part from the political sense from China is war, you have to differentiate just war and unjust war. You know. So this is the part they come in and say, you can't condemn war, just a war, but you have to differentiate whether it's a just war or unjust war. So this was the heavy part about it. We produced it, and the first, on the whole, usually we always have capacity houses because the Chinese people like to go to theater, and there's never enough. We have so many people, and each performance can only hold about 1,200 people in the theater. So you always, can have capacity houses. But for this play, sometimes we have empty seats among the audience. And to our dismay, some shows we even heard snoring among audience. Fell asleep. No, I guess, after a whole day, 8 days of work in the factory, 8 hours of work in the factory, it's possible you'll fall asleep if you don't understand what's going on the stage, you see. So.
Do you try Chekhov?
Who?
Chekhov.
Chekhov, yes, of course. When in the early 50s, when we had Russian experts in China, that was. Yeah, no, but that was very highly recommended by the Russian experts, and that was when they taught classes for directors, taught classes to train actors. That was the kind of production they will put on. Have this.
Well, the point is that they have no commitment. Therefore, I should think China would like this place. These people always fail because they're not engaged.
You mean the characters in Chekhov play?
In Three Sisters, the cherry orchard.
They're not committed, and that would convey the message that this is what happens to them when they aren't committed. The Chinese might be committed.
I should think they'd be popular.
Well, I don't know. I think what's the audience?
No, I think their criticism would be just that it's not explicit enough for the Chinese audience, that they would have some difficulty relating to that non-commitment. I think you got to realize that China has been going through a terrible upheaval for 150 years, and it was pretty hard to remain uncommitted in that kind of situation. If you did, you either wound up working for the wrong side or you wound up a total wreck or committing suicide. So that was not, there was not a very, it was not the kind of thing they were looking for in their stage. They want something that's going to inspire people, educate people in a certain direction, and they certainly weren't going to get that out of Chekhov. Now, later on, they may think, well, that's a very interesting play to put on, but at this particular point in their history, it just doesn't fit in with what they're trying to do.
Yes, please.
Madame Mont was an actress before he married in Mont. What was her influence on Chinese theatric works after liberation?
You see, she wasn't involved in Chinese art and literature for all the time after 49. There was a short period when she was assigned as a member of the board of film, belonged to the Film Bureau. What's the title? Film Review Board, belonged to the Film Bureau. She was assigned there for a few years, from 50 to probably only to 52, I think.
Yeah, right.
Only very short time. And the job, of course, is obvious. They would review all the films and see, evaluate whether it's worthwhile or not. And at the time, when she worked there, she ran into strong oppositions from some of the bureaucrats like Zhou Yang and Tian Han and others. You know, those before the Cultural Revolution, they were very powerful literary personalities in China, and they were in control after 49. Zhou Yang was the head of propaganda department, and Tian Han was in control of the writers' union and all that. So these people, they didn't agree with her viewpoint, and you know, sometimes she would say, I think she was conveying some of the ideas for Mao and expressed, but she didn't say that was Mao's idea. You know, she expressed in her own way in the board meeting, and they didn't agree with her viewpoint, so they would argue, and then of course she was also very strong, so she would stood up for the argument. So then finally, I think they complained to Liu Shaoqi. These people complained to Liu Shaoqi, said, well, we can't work with her because we are not clear. Sometimes, you know, she expressed an opinion. We are not clear whether that's her opinion or Chairman Mao's opinion, and she didn't make it clear to us. So, you know, if she argues with us in such a way that interferes with our work, we can't work, you know. So I think, I know that the Liu Shaoqi conveyed this complaint to Mao and said they feel they can't work, you know, so she should withdraw from this board. So she withdrew. She was out from that job until in the early 60s, I think, when Mao began to think about Cultural Revolution. That's when she tried to select plays which was possible to set up a few productions which would serve as the example of Mao's guideline. For example, make foreign things serve China, make ancient things serve today. You know, these guidelines to set up certain live examples of these kind of guidelines. That was her job, starting from early 60s. She looked around and saw lots of plays and tried to select certain plays which was possible to serve as examples. That's how these model productions came into being. So she became active starting 63, 64, or all the way. I think mainly she was really only acted as, you know, trying to carry out what Mao wanted her to do. Yes, please.
We're hearing some accounts recently in the media about Mao's wife having been very bourgeois in her own personal life. And I'm wondering, do you think these accounts are valid? And if so, why would Mao more or less put up with her?
I think the accusations of she's being very bourgeois, the stories I read in the papers, of course, it's about what she wearing Western clothing, and she, what else they say? They say, saw Western movies, these kind of criticisms. Well, about the Western movies, I can verify because I know we have an archive of old movies which belongs to the Central Film Bureau. And from time to time, the people who work in the cultural field, in theater, women, the ballet group of Red Detachment of Women, they looked at the Red Shoes many, many times, just to, you know, to try to see what they can borrow from borrow techniques from that movie. So this is a fact that, so this is not Jiang Qing alone is watching this movie, no one else. It's true, it's not publicly shown. It's not in, you can't buy a ticket from box office, but it's shown to these people, and the purpose, the argument is, maybe you can borrow something from these old movies, not its content or whatever, but maybe some certain technique, the lighting or the shooting or the montage or whatever, this kind of argument. So about the Western clothes, I think, well, we saw her pictures, right? We saw her pictures, what she wears in daily life, whenever she appears. I don't consider that kind of clothing is outrageous. In fact, I find it's, I don't know, the Western press once said, oh, she's so modern, she wear a meaty dress. But I find that dress is really not very shapely, right? The dress, we finally saw the picture of her wearing like a shirt sleeve dress or whatever.
Like a burlap bag.
Yeah, it's not very fashionable, not to any standard of, so I think, this, we can see for ourselves that, whether this criticism, this accusation, some things we can see with our own eyes, whether it can stand up or not, whether we can agree or not. So this should be obvious to everybody. We can, certain pictures we can see, and about other accusations, we have to, some things we can verify, some things we just don't know. That's all.
I think maybe we better have one or two more questions. We can retire to the maintenance shop after we have one or two more questions, perhaps. It is getting on towards 10 o'clock.
Yes, please.
You mentioned that once you produce some Western classics, and in turn it caused some negative impact, because the Western classic reflects some unhealthy or elusive social thinking or style. However, those Western arts or literatures do exist in the Western world, and some of that already is being glorified by these works. And we understand nowadays China is being more open, and there are more communication between China and the Western world. I just wonder, is there any way that that any Western art would deliver to the Chinese people so that they know what's right, what's wrong, so that they will be very defensive against those unhealthy thoughts come from the West?
I think the Western art, if you show it to the Chinese people, if you showed it to certain people in the city, probably they will like it, even with this kind of the wrong ideas, they still would accept it because it's obvious there are a certain group of people in Chinese society, particularly in the big cities, they have that kind of background before, or they're yearning for this kind of Western art. They probably would like it. But from my own experiences, it's true. If for the majority of the Chinese people, if you you take a Broadway show and take it to the Chinese countryside, I think the peasant audience would be appalled by the show. First of all, I don't think they will like it at all because they just don't understand it and they can't accept this kind of life and this kind of show. So this is such a different culture and different standard between the West and China. Now we're talking workers and peasants, and there's no point for the Chinese government to bring in these kind of Western art to the Chinese workers and peasants. Maybe in the future, I don't know when. When would the Chinese workers and peasants want to see this kind of Western art?
I think you can get very specific. For example, well, take some of America's better playwrights, Edward Albee or Tennessee Williams, people like that. And while here we can appreciate what they're saying because we have the background, we know what, for example, Tennessee Williams is talking about, the decadence of a certain group of people in the southern part of the United States. That's his theme. And so we have the background to understand it. But they would feel that there's no resolution there. It shows people destroying themselves, but they've been through this, and they don't believe in destroying themselves. They believe in destroying the enemy. And so, you know, what are they going to get out of it? So they'll see a piece of art that's true, but they don't go to the theater just to see art. They go to be inspired and educated and to understand a little bit more about their problems in life. So I just don't, you know, what are you going to send them? Blood, sweat, and tears? You know, I don't think they'll appreciate it. I think it's a lot of noise, you know, which it probably is.
Would you ever advocate
Please.
a traveling group coming from China with one of their better contemporary plays so that Americans could at least be exposed to what would be the
One of the most,
Americans to that
yeah,
particular play?
the one of the most difficult part to bring a drama troupe is the language problem. The language. You see this,
Yeah, well, it doesn't work.
it doesn't
For
work.
example, there was a very famous writer, you know his name because he wrote Rickshaw Boy, Lao She. Lao She, you know. And he wrote a play called Caguar, is Tea House. You know, now, even if Shanghai Theater wants to act Tea House, it won't come off, you know. It's got to be Peking people speaking in that Peking dialect, you know, then the full flavor comes out. You know, it's like a smoked ham down in Virginia somewhere. That's the kind of thing it is. And so, you know, you bring those actors over here, they'll act their hearts out, you know, but you won't understand a word they're saying, and it comes through the earphone, and you just lose everything. Now, we had this experience. For example, they
Japanese
brought
play.
Japanese plays to China. And the Chinese artists went to a great deal of effort to make sure that every speaker on the stage had
Well, we supplied them with professional actors.
professional actors as the
to dub it.
to dub it, you know. So, but even then, you know, you see them acting up on the stage there, and you're hearing this thing in the ear, and it's driving you crazy, you know, and you can't make contact with the people up on. It's really a barrier there. It's one of the most difficult things. Now, ballet, something like that, it's a little easier to do, you know. And but they showed like the red detachment of women on TV here, you know. Most of the audience felt, well, gee whiz, that's a little heavy political, isn't it? You know, the very fact that this girl is emoting there, and but she's not emoting toward toward a man or something. She's emoting toward the Communist Party of China. Well, boy, the American audience just can't relate to that at all. It's a little difficult for them. So there are some problems.
Yes, please.
I think that you talk about, those artists or
Cultural workers, yeah.
go to the village and work with the people and write out. I think it's easy, I don't know the situation over there, okay? It's easy, you go to the country and get those people, you live with them and know what they're doing. Is that easy to get those kind of information out of the city? Okay, that's my first question. The second is, okay, all those plays, all the people in the countryside, all the peasants. And when you play, okay, those play, when you go to the city, can people accept them, or vice versa?
Oh, yeah, the plays about peasants certainly would be accepted in the city because,
Is that the purpose of trying to educate people?
well, you see, because we are not putting on peasant play just for peasants and workers play just for workers. Like we say, we depict heroes among the workers, peasants, soldiers. These are the heroes who would be models for the whole society. So it's not restricted to one sector of the society. And it will be accepted because nowadays, in the Chinese society, there are constant exchange between city people and country people. That's not like before is completely segregated between Chinese cities and countryside. The other question about whether if we live among the city people, whether we can do the same thing. Nowadays, yes, you can, because people, like I said, in the audience realize art and literature belong to them. So they have the responsibility. They also have the right to do so. So we can get things from them if we are providing we are sincere. You see, they are very shrewd. These people, if you go there, you try to just sit around and trying to collect material from them, squeeze something out from them, and they know you're not really part of them. You're not really trying to integrate with them. What you are trying to do is squeeze as much as possible and go back and trying to produce something glorious for yourself. So then they'll reject you, and they won't tell you anything. So this is a test for the writers and the actors. Yes, please.
I understand you left China in 1971.
Yeah, 71, yes.
How much contact do you have with China? Or, in other words, how much you spoke tonight represent the current thinking in China?
Well, I have friends in China, of course. I have family in China. And I talk to people here. I read everything from China. I follow the news, Chinese newspaper, Chinese journals. So, and I think from my own life experience, whatever I can read, whatever I can hear, whatever I can talk to people, I'm pretty confident of my own analysis. Yes, please.
Have you been involved in the theater in any way since leaving China?
Here? No, not involved in the theater here, because I just feel it's so different. There's no way for me to participate.
One final question, back there.
This is a question apart from the theater. In your discussion, I'm trying to understand the culture. In the discussion of the woman who had the 3 affairs and the questioning of her about the causes for this, is it ever considered appropriate to question about perhaps her husband's treatment of her, or in some way that he might be involved in her behavior? Would it be appropriate to question this way?
Oh, yes, of course. In the group, we will analyze from all angles. It's not only, anything, any kind of thinking she had.
Would they also question such things as perhaps some desires of hers, I don't know what for, whether for excitement or for some sort of achievement or whatever, but that perhaps are not being reached some other place in her life? Might this also be a way of questioning or not?
Well, we analyze from all angles, really from all angles, and it's quite penetrating, I can assure you.
Do you have a psychiatrist in China?
No, we don't.